Welcome to Puro Politics, the political podcast of San Antonio Express News. My name is Gilbert Garcia, opinion writer and columnist, and I'm joined by
Kerry Clack, columnist, editorial board.
Metro editor Greg Jefferson.
Nancy Prayer-Johnson, deputy editorial board editor.
And we're going to get to some updates about Congressman Henry Cuellar and his indictment and sort of all the fallout from that. But we're going to start with the drama and division on city council now. And we had a lot happening last week, and it kind of deals with the issue of transparency, City Hall. You've got mayoral politics coming into it. You've got the city's apparent budget challenges, collective bargaining with the firefighters. All these things are kind of wrapped up in a memo that we saw last week from 5 city council members calling on City Manager Eric Walsh to have a meeting as soon as possible to discuss the suitability of City Attorney Andy Segovia. And then they followed that up with a press conference. Greg, what's going on here?
Part of it is, I think there are a lot of complaints that have built up among council members about Andy Segovia over time. But I think they really want to talk about the state of the fire union negotiations. Andy doesn't, and they're kind of at loggerheads. And I think that's really what's fueling this.
Yeah. You had calls for a meeting, an executive session where they could talk behind closed doors about this. Ron Nirenberg, the mayor, was saying we can talk about it. In front of, we can have an open meeting, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to do an executive session. And so yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
What seems to be underlying all this is the belief, which I think Andy Segovia has and maybe others have, that either someone or maybe multiple people on the council are leaking information about the negotiations back to the firefighters. And there's kind of a trust has broken down, I think.
Yeah. And Andy Segovia was explicit about this in this statement he released Thursday or Friday to the media. He said, part of it is he's concerned about leaks. Now, given that I'm unaware of any leaks to the news media regarding the contract negotiations, it leads me to believe that he's concerned about council members who support the union leaking information to their negotiating team.
Yeah. And so, it's almost like a perfect 5-5 split. The 5 council members who are questioning Andy Segovia are Marina Gavito, Melissa Cabello-Haverda, Terry Castillo, Jalen McKee-Rodriguez, Mark White. And Andy Segovia has been defended by a couple of people who are out there as mayoral candidates already, Manny Pelaez and John Courage. John Courage tweeted last week in response to this memo in the press conference. He said the headline should be, quote, "A group of council members lack confidence in city attorney," or it shouldn't be a group of council members lack confidence in city attorney. It should be, quote, "City attorney lacks trust in a few council members for not keeping the integrity and confidence of executive sessions." So that's what you're doing.
Which sounds like they've already leaked. That there is an example that maybe Andy Segovia and other council members have of a member talking kind of out of school to the fire union. We don't know, and Andy Segovia won't say, but that appears to be what's happening.
But I think if they think that, it has to be for a reason. I think it's very basic that if you're in an executive session, I think we're all very familiar with boards, and some of us are on some. But if you're in an executive session meeting and information is shared right there on the spot, and then right after or soon after the parties involved know about it and they weren't there, then it doesn't take much imagination to imagine how that happened. But the question is who and why. I think the council members, I don't know. I think that a number of them could be guilty, but it's just a matter of whether we're going to find out who it is.
I think it was
whether they care.
I think what's interesting is the difference between with Segovia's statement and encourage. Because Segovia's statement, you can interpret it just a leak to the media.
Yeah,
right.
We don't
right.
And I think
have
that's
that.
when people say, when a
Because
public official says leak, I think that's what people automatically think. But that's just not the case here.
But with courage, it was a bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he was.
Very clear.
Yeah. He was a little more. He kind of clarified things for us a little bit. Yeah.
And the politics are interesting because you got, like I said, you got two mayoral candidates who are, taking Andy's side and would probably be seen as maybe, I don't think they would necessarily define themselves anti-fire union, but I mean, they're certainly on the opposing side on this issue. Melissa Cabello-Haverdo, who many of us think will run for mayor, she's very much on the side of the fire union.
Yeah, I mean, she seems to be, judging from the news conference the 5 council members gave, I mean, she was the most outspoken, I think, of the council members at the news conference. And I'm not all that surprised that Manny Pelaez, he had a very strong reaction to this group of 5 and what they were doing and trying to force a meeting on, his Andy Segovia's suitability. He, basically said that this was political gamesmanship. It was an irresponsible move. And kind of followed up, statements to the press with a video that I think he posted on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And it just felt kind of driven, at least in part by mayoral politics. I mean, I think he saw a chance to go after Melissa Cabello-Haverdo, who has, like you said, she's not announced yet, but she's expected to announce a run for mayor in 2025. Mm-hmm. And it seems like we're kind of getting, you have what was already a kind of complicated situation, and you're infusing it with mayoral politics that are going to play out next year.
I think we're going to learn more about this in the coming days, but there was the sense from the memo and some of the social media messaging that's gone out there that while the firefighter negotiations are probably the big thing that's driving it, it's probably the big issue. I think there are maybe at least a few of these council members who have had some issues with Andy. Mm-hmm. There's some suggestion they've had some issues with Andy for a while, that they feel like maybe they've gotten contradictory information from him when they've asked questions, maybe regarding legal issues. And we'll learn more details about that. But I think that I get the sense that for at least some of these 5, there's some other things going on, and maybe this has been building for a while.
Right. And my question that I keep coming back to, and I just don't think we have a good answer to it, is why do these 5 council members, why do they want to inject the city council into these contract negotiations now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, in the past, I think city council has more or less stayed out of the way and let city administration handle the negotiations. And I think that's appropriate. I just don't think it's city council's role to kind of put itself in the middle of contract talks. Yeah. Just not a good idea.
That has been my question too. So this didn't happen with the police union contract, right? With this kind of thing. That's what kind of surprised me, because that's the one that obviously just happened.
Mm-hmm. Not that I'm aware of.
At this level, it didn't. So that's what sticks out about this one compared to the police one, which had its own issues, obviously.
I think, one of the factors as far as why we're seeing thornier negotiations with the fire union than we saw recently with the police is, this again goes back to what the firefighters were able to get through, the propositions they were able to get through, the charter amendments in 2018. One of them, the one that probably got the least attention at the time, was they gave them the power to unilaterally push negotiations into binding arbitration. Mm-hmm. They activated that in 2019, and it backfired on them. They didn't get the deal.
Didn't really work out really well for them.
So I think they're trying. There's some makeup negotiating going on their side. They're trying to catch up for what
and they must be concerned about going back to arbitration. They didn't exactly get great results.
Right. Exactly.
Can anyone think of another time when you have members of city council standing on the steps of City Hall, basically demanding that a city staffer being fired? I don't include the city manager.
I can't remember that,
but I can't think of a city staffer is not. Something.
Yeah, no. I mean, and that's why I think that the precipitating thing is the fire union negotiations, but there's a lot that's built up over time. I think that's pretty clear. You don't make a move like that unless you're just kind of ridiculous about it, without some history of grievances against the guy.
I mean, just if you look at the big picture too with this council, there's just always something. There's always some kind of negative headline. There's always, which keeps us busy, but my gosh, it just seems that they cannot keep out of like some kind of drama.
Well, underlying,
for some reason.
And underlying this is, which we've talked about before, is, I mean, we're looking at the first open mayoral seat in 16 years. And that's in the mix.
Yeah. I mean, you've got two announced mayoral candidates right now. In the not too distant future, Melissa Cabello Haverda will probably announce, and Adriana Rocha Garcia might. She's as far as I know, she's still considering it. So that brings some volatility to any kind of high stakes issue that the city council takes up. They're going to be looking for ways to differentiate themselves from the other 2025 candidates.
Now, when we were talking about the negotiations, and they've been negotiating for a couple of months, and things have not gone well so far. And what the firefighters want is they want what they call an equity adjustment. This is, again, kind of making up for what we lost out at the last time. They want in the first year, $7,500 raise, and plus a 4% bump. And the second year, I think it would be $4,000, additional $4,000 plus the 4%. If you break it down, if you look at roughly 1,800 members of the firefighters union and look at what they're asking for in the first year, we're probably looking at a little bit more than $20 million in additional cost to the city. And then that would increase in the second year. So this is a substantial amount of money. It's not necessarily going to overwhelming, but it's a challenge. Because we've already been hearing from City Manager Eric Walsh that the city has the possibility of a shortfall. I think he said that they're looking at maybe $10.6 million over the next 2 years, and the reason he cited is that property tax revenue is not growing as at the same rate that we've seen before. Greg, when you look at this, I mean, we've seen in the past with the city, and you covered city for years, we've had, concerns, warnings about budgetary problems. And then often in the summer, we have very hot summer.
It's a hot summer.
Every year. Yeah.
CPS energy comes through again.
Yeah. And we get this big,
that's why, I always
take CPS.
I take budgetary forecast with kind of a grain of salt. This one is really no different. There's so many different factors in play, including, so what will be the final shape of the fire union? That'll be pretty important to the budget. But, in some ways, even more importantly, is how is CPS Energy going to do? As they send the city about 14% of their gross revenue every year. When it's hot, people use a lot of electricity. So that 14% is bigger. And it's not at all uncommon, almost normal that CPS revenue comes in higher than predicted. And, what looks really kind of dire in April and May, suddenly, it's okay. No problem. Come August.
Yeah. And I don't, I think the numbers are what, legitimately what they are saying they are now. But I mean, there's an awareness that those CPS revenues could be bigger than projected, and I think there is. It doesn't hurt to kind of create a sense that we have to tighten our belt now, and then, things are better than we thought.
I mean, in a way, I'm sure that the city's budget forecasters have, they've figured out, we could have a $10.6 million deficit over the next 2 years. But it's also a way of conditioning city council members to kind of focus them on just not going nuts on spending heading into the next budget cycle, which is right on us, because they'll approve the 2025 budget in mid-September. So you've only got a few months till that comes up.
Yeah, encouraging austerity right now.
Yeah.
Kerry, when you look at this, I mean, you've got 5 council members on one side. We got, with the ones who signed this memo, we got 5 on the other side. It seems to me that Mayor Nirenberg is kind of on that side. With this kind of division, I mean, how do you think the council's going to be able to function going forward, or do you think it's going to kind of come into play with other issues?
I think ultimately, whatever year you're looking at, whatever decade, there's been city council, there's been a lot more drama than this, frankly, and they usually find a way, to do what they need to do. But I do think that this is going to get so much more wild, because especially with the whole question about the leaking. Mm-hmm. Because I think one of the things you were saying, Greg, about like with Segovia is that, these 5 who are out there on the steps, the reasons may be different. Some may be more concerned about the negotiation with the firefighter union, but others it's just escalating, building problems with the city attorney. So, but if there becomes more of an issue about the leaking and who was the leaker, then you might have some folks within that 5 who aren't the leakers or leaker or whatever. And it's going to get wild.
I mean, the motivations should be, it's on its most basic level, the motivation should be representing their constituents in their district. That should be the motivation, period. But I think so much more is getting tangled up in here. And that leak, it is a huge issue, because if you think about the kinds of things they talk about in executive session, personnel matters, and all kinds of things that arise, in the past, but things we don't even know about that they're going to talk about later. And we shouldn't probably, and I say this, and it breaks my heart as a journalist, but maybe shouldn't be out there for the public on first cursory glance, right? Not everything should be out at the very beginning in the conversations. But if they're not comfortable, like you had in the back and forth about it, Ron Nirenberg, he said, no, if we're going to talk about this and we're going to talk about it in public, because the trust is lost. And so if you have a board, if you have a council that doesn't believe each other, they don't believe in one another to keep the tenets of just basics of being a council person and holding right to those policies, and then what do they have if they don't trust each other?
Yeah. Yeah, Nirenberg's argument for holding, if we're going to talk about the fire union negotiations, we should do it in public.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting and kind of in its own right. I wonder if he's counting on council members pulling their punches and effectively saying nothing. Yeah. But if he's wrong, then you have, what you risk in doing that is, on the one hand, they might just kind of, it's like, okay, well, we're saying things out loud, so we'll be moderate and temperate and effective, like I said, effectively say nothing, or they could just go for it. And
I think they're going to go for it.
Yeah, it's like, and
some of them.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they're using union talking points and just kind of here's what I think should happen in these negotiations. I'd be surprised if that would, if that happens, but not totally surprised.
Wanted to shift to Henry Cuellar. We talked a lot last week about the congressman's indictment on bribery and money laundering charges. And when we discussed what's happened with him, we talked a bit about Colin Strother, who is his former chief of staff and has been was a really loyal political operative for him for many years, and that ended right about the time that Henry Cuellar's home and campaign office were raided 2 years ago. And we were kind of speculating a little bit about where this was going to go. We knew he was going to be a player in this, and we know more.
Pretty much where it's going.
Yeah,
yeah. So Colin Strother entered a guilty plea agreement last Thursday. I think it was booked in late Wednesday. We wrote about it Thursday morning. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm in Cuellar world, so it's all kind of a blur. It all kind of flows together. No problem. That same day, a San Antonio businessman named Florencio Rendon also entered a plea. This is Rendon he's an interesting character. He was Representative Congressman Solomon Ortiz's chief of staff forever. I mean, this is Ortiz. You'll remember was the congressman kind of representing the Corpus Christi area. He was knocked out of office in 2010 by Republican Blake Farenthold. Which is a name. It was kind of fun in his own right. But anyway, so
there's a whole podcast.
It's a whole other. Anyway, so Rendon, he'd left Ortiz's staff in 2006, and he started two consulting firms based in Corpus Christi. He has one called LG Global. It's based in San Antonio. Does government relations. The LG Global company deals in renewable energy projects. But really, in this case, he's kind of casting in his plea agreement. He appears to have been basically a fixer between Congressman Cuellar and a Mexico City-based bank called Banco Azteca.
And was Florencio Rendon, was he the person that Henry Cuellar approached Colin Strother about meeting with? Was he the person that you
That's
need
right.
to meet with? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he was, and he met, Rendon met with, according to his plea agreement, with Congressman Cuellar in, I believe it was October 2015. Don't hold me to the year, but and said Cuellar allegedly said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity with this bank in Mexico City. Could you help me out?" And Rendon then kind of got involved in negotiating this contract, which was for a sham company allegedly set up by Imelda Cuellar, who is Henry's wife. And Rendon says she shouldn't get direct payments from the bank. It should go through another company, just as a pass-through to get to Imelda Cuellar's company. And so that's when Congressman Cuellar allegedly says, "Hey, I know a guy, Colin Strother. Why don't you get with him?" And I think he directed whether he reached out to Colin or Rendon did. Either way, they met and they set up this payment arrangement so that Strother and company would receive payments from the bank through Rendon and then pass it on to Imelda Cuellar's.
He'd get $11,000 a month.
Right.
He'd pass $10,000 to Imelda Cuellar, and then Colin Strother would keep $1,000 for himself.
Right. And the total wound up being bigger because Rendon had to have his cut, which he apparently got. That's kind of the state of play.
One of the fascinating pieces of this that emerged later in the week with the Express News reporting on this was that at one point Henry Cuellar thought that Colin Strother was holding out, not giving, not passing enough money to his wife.
So that's right. So they cut off payments, and they had a meeting in Laredo. Dinner meeting afterwards in the parking lot. According to the Strother's plea agreement, he's pulling out his phone. He's going through a spreadsheet. It's like, look, here are all the payments. Everything's fine. And after that, he received 3 more payments, and then he was cut off after that.
Now, according to his plea agreement, Colin Strother is saying that initially when this sham thing was set up and it's supposed to be for a fuel additive company and everything, that he thought it was legitimate, that he
was actually trying to do work. He was producing some kind of work product and noticed that nobody cared. He never heard back. And it does say in the plea agreement, he did figure it out. I mean, so it's not, he wasn't
and he kept
an innocent
doing
party.
It.
That's right. Like he wasn't an innocent party. Maybe at the beginning, he believed that this was a legitimate company and the work they were asking him to do was kind of normal contracting work for a political operative, a fuel additive, testing the market. I don't know. But he figured it out. And therein lies his vulnerability under the law.
Yeah. What's he looking at? What kind of legal?
It's hard to say. He's because he's dealing with he's cooperating fully with the Justice Department as far as we can tell. So, but yeah, I mean, look, money laundering is a serious crime, and that's what he's accused of. I believe, I'm not going to, off the top of my head, tell you what he's, what he could get as far as a prison sentence, but it's, if prosecutors determine that he has truly cooperated, it's going to be less. Under sentencing, they can depart from sentencing guidelines in the plea agreement if they feel like he's given them everything he can give them.
And Nancy, I'm looking at this and thinking, I mean, this is someone who was really loyal to Cuellar for about 20 years. It would seem to me like he would be a really devastating witness for the federal government against Cuellar.
Absolutely. I'm sure he knows all kinds of information. And if his own freedom is on the line, I mean, I think that the allegations could get even more damning if it, if he complies. And I think he will comply because who they're really after is Cuellar, not him, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, we're trying to figure out exactly at what point Strother started cooperating with prosecutors. But his criminal defense attorney, Michael McCrum, who's, he's a pretty well-regarded defense attorney.
Devastating quote that he had about.
Oh, yeah. That, if I were Henry or Melda Cuellar, I would be concerned.
Yes. I mean, so simple yet.
Yeah, but I mean, the quote that came before that, it at least implied that Strother's cooperation with the Justice Department preceded his plea agreement, preceded the indictment of Henry Cuellar.
And see, this is, it's fascinating because, it could, that still leaves a pretty big window because as we talked about last week, I mean, in the days leading up to the raid at Henry Cuellar's home, Colin Strother was still on social media, just throwing like darts at anyone who was critical of him and anyone who was on Jessica Cisneros, Cuellar's primary opponent's side. So, just if you looked at it that way, you would think that something happened shortly before the raid.
That night he deleted his Twitter account.
Now it's possible that what he was projecting on social media might have not. It might have been at odds with what was going on, behind the scenes. We don't know that.
Yeah. I mean, he could have. He's very clearly exiled from Henry Cuellar world. I mean, like he's not part of it.
Coincidentally, we talk about someone who was very, very close to Cuellar and going to testify. And right now in New York City, we have Michael Cohen on the stand, testifying against Trump, against someone who knows.
Former fixer,
Yeah, and the thing was hope about Cuellar and them thinking that Strother was cheating on them. It's like, who can you trust? And it reminds me of B.B. King had a song said, "Hey, Mister, your wife is cheating on us." I thought you had a woman we both could trust.
Oh my God!
I mean, there's no. I mean, if these allegations are proven to be true, you can come back and say, there's no honor among thieves, because you also have there's a Mexican lawmaker who helped bring this all about. The bribery scream between Congressman Cuellar and Banco Azteca. And at one point, I think it was I can't remember whose pleading it was, Rendon's or Strother's. He's complaining about, hey, where's my cut? It's like, I provided a service and I've not gotten my cut yet. Why have you not taken care of me?
I keep thinking about his constituents, and I mean, just everybody that has, that needs him, needs a person in that position to do the work, right? To do the work and to represent them. But also I keep thinking, is there more that we don't know about? How long had he been doing this? Was this his first time and he got caught? I do feel, maybe there was other stuff that just hadn't risen to that level yet.
It's certainly possible.
If he wanted to do one, again, that just he's innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
But regardless, his time is going to be taken. It's going to be consumed for the next many, many months.
Yeah.
I'm one of his constituents.
Yeah.
If he wanted to do one thing that people can say, okay, he was he wasn't just thinking about himself. It would be to resign so that we could have a special election and get somebody in there. And if, depending on, as a Democrat, then you would want him to put his party in a position where they can hold on to the seat.
Yeah. I think that makes, and it's, all these things are complicated because we're in an election year. So if you have a special election, it's going to be kind of, overlapping to some degree with the general election this year. But I think it probably makes the most sense. I mean, if he decided to stay in office and just pulled out as the nominee, then I mean, he represents more than one county. It's going to be very complicated. I think as far as selecting somebody, I think a special election would make the most sense to have him just resign. But he was kind of quiet on social media for a few days, and then we saw a little more activity over the weekend from him. And yesterday, Mother's Day, he posted a family photo and was just praising his wife and Imelda, and some of the comments he's getting. I mean, he's
resign.
I don't think anybody who knows Henry Cuellar would even kind of knows him would expect him to just try to recede into the shadows. Mm-hmm. He's gonna try to tough it out. Yeah, like there's no.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
I mean, I just don't.
Well, he's obviously did it the first time. He should have bowed out before.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't believe he's going to. Well, we're gonna. I'm gonna take the temperature, take some counsel, and figure out. I think he's just gonna try to stick.
Well, I think with Texas Monthly.
I know. I had to ask the Selena thing.
Well, Texas Monthly. He wouldn't talk. He wouldn't talk to them about this. But he went over his playlist, and then the reporter asked, "What no Selena? No." Then he's looking at anything. He says, "Have you heard? Did you hear her try to sing Spanish? She doesn't know Spanish." I mean, like you're in the worst trouble of your life, and you're mocking Selena.
I mean, there could be an indictment for that. No, you're right, Greg. It's in his nature to he's gonna fight to the kind of final moment.
Through,
Mm-hmm. And I mean the what we've seen with like Bob Menendez and others. There's kind of a pattern. You just hang on as long as you can. I don't think it's the way to do. It's the honorable thing to do, but that's.
He may
Trump,
be someone who...
We have to say Trump's name in there too. Yes.
He may be someone who cannot be shamed.
Yeah.
Speaking of...
He thinks he's above the law. But he's not above the law.
On that life-affirming note, we're gonna wrap things up for the week, and we'll be back with y'all next week. Take care.